Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of An Author's Kiss right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Bill Saubert. We're going to be talking about his new book, The Girl with the Green Lipstick, a psychological thriller. I can't wait to actually read the book and know more about it, but this psychological thriller shows how one lonely man could easily fall for a sexy woman who he really doesn't know. Not only does she try to steal his heart, but she also tries to steal his money, run his business into the ground, and hires her lover to kill him. It's based on a true story. You know, when we look at fiction, we always think, who got this, who got this? But yes, it comes out of reality very often. Imagine losing the love of your life to cancer at a time when your golden years are not too far away. Then imagine entering the dating scene after a long layoff. Heartbroken and desperate for romance, you come upon an attractive woman on an online dating site, and she takes an interest in you. Things move quickly. Everything about her is new and exciting, yet familiar enough to feel that you can let your guard down in her presence. You get married. Then things start to unravel. Okay, let's find out how they unravel. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Well, thanks, Sarah. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and your viewers and listeners. And it is fiction for sure, but it is based on my story. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't think I certainly didn't realize after my wife died of ovarian cancer at 59 just how bereft and vulnerable I was. And I wore my wedding band for 16 months because I still felt married.
Yes.
And
Yes.
when I finally took it off, the wife of a neighbor said to me, "Look, I spoke to Carol before she died. She clearly wants you to date, and you're a healthy, fit man, and interests in a nice house, and whatever and whatever, and she told me you don't have to burn a candle in front of her picture every night, and get out there." And my husband and I met online on Match, and you should do that. And I said, "Well, okay." So the first woman that I saw a profile that I was interested in turned out to be the girl with the green lipstick. And
Was it the green lipstick that drew you to her?
well, I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it turns out we had a date, and then she kind of played hard to get. And so I started dating other gals because I figured you've made the decision. Just because this one isn't interested doesn't mean that there aren't other people that might be.
Exactly.
And a couple of months later, she contacted me and said that she'd lost her job and was really in need of a job. And she didn't know that I have a retail store operation. At the time, I had 5 UPS stores. But it turned out I needed a manager in one of those stores. And I said, "Look, I can give you a job. I can hire you and pay you reasonably well for Albuquerque, New Mexico." And she was thrilled. And I happened to have another reason to speak to my attorney about that same time. And I was telling her about this gal. And she said, "Oh, Bill, do yourself a favor. Don't date an employee. It is way too fraught with bad possibilities and outcomes." And so, as I say, I had started dating other people, and so I just kept her as my manager, and we didn't date, but I was around her all the time. And I found that if I tried to establish a relationship with somebody else, it was always that they weren't her. And she could be cute and fun and funny and sexy. And did I mention sexy? And,
That'll lure a hook.
Yeah. So at any rate, I finally just realized that I had fallen in love with her, and I said, "Look, about 18 months after I'd hired her, I said, look, why don't we try to have a relationship and run my store operation as a team, and really just you know have a strong thing going here, because I think we're around each other all the time, and we've been together, but now we're not, and it just seems to make sense." And she said, "Okay, well, if you buy me a carat-and-a-half Tiffany diamond engagement ring, I'll marry you." So I did. And I said, "Look, we're going to have to figure out how to get you moved into my house in Santa Fe, which is about 50 miles away from Albuquerque. And it's it's straight up and down Interstate 25, and people commute every day between those two cities. So it's not a big deal." And she said, I'm not moving to Santa Fe. 3 of your stores are down here in Albuquerque, and my son is going to UNM, and he works for you. And so, we need to have a place here. I said, "Okay, I'll buy a house in Albuquerque, and we'll split our time between that house and my house in Santa Fe." And about 3 weeks after I bought the house, she moved her lover into the house.
Oh, okay.
So he was living there, and he's a Mexican national who's a handyman, who's about 20 years her junior. And so at any rate, I thought, well, I, I, I grew up a hard scrabble existence in Montana, and you try to endure the lows so that you can get to the highs, so that you can get to the good stuff. And you look back on the bad stuff and you say, what was I worried about? Holy cow, look at all this, how good this is.
Mm-hmm.
And I have said before, and I'll say it again about my relationship with this woman, the highs and lows emotionally I experienced with her were the highest and lowest I've ever experienced with any human being, man or woman.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to endure the lows
because
you crave the highs.
Mm-hmm. The sugar high. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So her father
lots of cavities here. Bank cavities. The sugar highs, a lot of bank cavities.
Exactly. Emotional cavities were getting created almost daily. So at any rate, the upshot of all of that was her father had died. She was close to her dad. He'd had serious dementia and kind of went in and out for the better part of the time we had our relationship. And that was hard on her. And she was adopted, and the mom and dad had a son naturally about a year after she was brought home. And they adopted her when she was about 6 months old. So she hadn't had really an opportunity to bond with a mother and a father. And there are psychologists who will tell you, and psychiatrists for that matter, that 6 month early age bonding is really critical to how people develop emotionally later on in life. But this woman was clearly a narcissist. She's clearly on the sociopath, psychopath spectrum. And finally, I said, look, we need to talk. If I made a mistake, I'll fix it. We can get divorced, we can do whatever. And she said, well, I'm not going to have sex with you unless we go to a relationship therapist, a marriage counselor. And I said, okay, fine. So I looked online and found a counselor in Albuquerque, so she wouldn't have to be inconvenienced to come to Santa Fe. And when I told her about this woman, she said, well, who referred you to her? Now that's a trap, because if a friend of mine had referred her, then she's tainted and she's on my team and can't possibly be objective about this woman's situation. And I said, the truth. I said, I found her online. I don't know this woman from Adam. So at any rate, I called her and she said, well, the way I normally do this is I meet with each of you individually first, and then if it makes sense, I'll see you as a couple. And I said, fine. I said, let me do some. Sorry about that. So I went to the first session with this therapist, and I was about 40 minutes into explaining why I was there, and she put her hand up and said, let me stop you. She said, you need to get rid of this woman. She's horrible. You need to speak to your attorney tomorrow and get divorced because she will try to destroy you emotionally, financially, every possible way she can. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh,
I came here to fix the marriage and you're telling me to delete it.
yeah,
Yes.
really. And so I did. I called my attorney the next day and started the divorce proceedings. During this period, this woman that I was married to filed a sexual harassment suit against me and retaliation. Now, there's no legal basis whatsoever, at least in this state, for a spouse suing a spouse they work for sexual harassment. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean,
But
excuse
it
me?
doesn't prevent somebody from filing a suit.
Right. Uh-huh.
So at any rate, so I'm back to my attorney and I'm explaining what's going on and that I have filed for divorce because my corporate attorney is different from my divorce attorney. So I had two attorneys involved. At any rate, and she started asking me some questions and she said, you know something, Bill, something just doesn't add up about this gal. Do you mind if I do a background check? I said, no, that's fine. You do whatever you think you need to do. So at any rate, about 3 or 4 days later, she called me and said, I think you need to come down to our office. And I said, okay. And in their conference room, she had spread out on the conference room table about 300 pages of this woman's criminal history.
Wow.
And as well, she's a repeat offender felon. She's been in prison 3, maybe 4 times. She spent time in federal prison for mail fraud, which of course sent me a wake-up call. And I started looking at my store bank accounts and realized there were a phenomenal number of charges to Amazon, which she had said she was doing to aggregate our purchases and get better discounts for the stores. And my stores were losing money to the tune of about 20 or 25,000 a month. And so I said, whatever we can do to save money, let's do it. So I began to look into, began to ask people in my stores, does my wife come by and bring, printer ink and cleaning supplies and stuff we sell to customers and whatever. And one of them said, wow, it's been about, a year and a half since she did that last. And I thought, uh-oh. So we made her, as part of the divorce agreement, produce receipts from these Amazon purchases, which, by the way, were in her personal account, not in a store account, which I had said it's got to be in a store account because you get hit by a bus, I won't ever be able to get into that account. And I need to be able to produce receipts, at least for tax purposes.
Right.
So she hemmed and hawed, dragged her feet, but I wasn't paying her any money until I got the receipts. And she desperately needed money, or so she said. And so she started producing them. And out of 500 receipts that she produced, about 10 of them were for store purchases and 490 were for personal things. Bra pad, she's very small on top. Designer handbags, leather handbags, and cream, very expensive cream. And so at any rate, we finally got the divorce finalized, and I forced she and her boyfriend out of the house, and I sold the house almost immediately. And I said to the buyer, look, she took all the furniture, that's fine. But the only fixture she wanted was a ceiling fan and light in the master bedroom, which she called shabby chic and I called early American bordello. It was this white filigree that had these cut crystal teardrop
Mm,
baubles dangling from it. And she had replaced it with a pretty garden variety light ceiling fan, which is fine. But I said, look, the boyfriend, who's a handyman, probably installed it. I don't know that he's a qualified electrician. Just make sure everything is fine. Just check it, or I'll pay to have an electrician look at it if you want. So at any rate, this guy's pretty handy, and he got on his ladder and took the base plate off and saw something up in there and thought it was a toy and pulled it out. And it turned out it was an incendiary device. And the only reason it didn't go off and burn the house down is because one side had come loose, presumably when they were putting the base plate back on. And so,
so she was trying to sabotage. I mean,
yeah,
imagine if somebody had moved in there,
yeah,
with
they
that.
had. I mean,
Right.
these people were in the process of moving in. I just said, check it. I
So
mean,
this
what
wasn't, like
decided to stay there.
a vendetta against you. She could have killed people.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's attempted murder at a
Mm.
minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So at any rate,
Get the
and
police
the
in.
boyfriend is the one who installed it. So,
Right.
you know, you're getting the picture here of how
Mm.
her antisocial behavior
Mm.
began to kind of increase and accelerate antisocial behavior toward me and others. But at any rate, about 6 months later, I got a call from the wife of the person who bought the house. And she said, the weirdest thing happened. And I said, what's that? And she said, well, a box from Ulta.com, which is the high-end cosmetics place, arrived, and it's addressed to your ex-wife. What should I do with it? And I said, well, open it up. I want to make sure she's not using my credit cards again to buy personal items.
Yeah, surely you'd blocked her.
Yeah, let's just see what's in there. And so she opened it up and she said, well, there's blush and a makeup brush and frog green lipstick. And I said, what? She said, yeah, dark green lipstick. I said, give me the brand, give me the details. So I Googled it, and it turns out this stuff goes on dark green, and the pH in your lips turns it bright pink. And so she was the girl with the green lipstick. Is the girl with the green lipstick.
Yes, yes.
So more and more I discovered her criminal activities and behavior. And she is currently of high interest to several law enforcement agencies. And we'll see if she goes back. But she's at large. She lives freely and laughs at the state of New Mexico.
Wow. I would like to say this is kind of a one-off story, but it isn't.
Right.
Right. There are plenty of women out there that this almost becomes their profession.
Yeah.
Right? And
this is how she lives.
This is how she lives. When you talk about the Black Widow, she's the, I don't know whether she aimed to kill you or not, but, it is similar too, because it's whether she divorces you or not, she wants to take you for everything. And had it not been for your lawyers doing the background check, you probably wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. You would have had to given her this, that, etc. And so that kind of probably saved you. Their due diligence.
No two ways about it. And I said to my divorce attorney, who was not aware of this stuff that we had accumulated from my other attorney, you need, when we go to the hearing about being paid and getting our receipts, you need to tell the judge that she has done this before, that she's a repeat offender felon for embezzlement from previous employers. And she goes, oh, Bill, her lawyer will probably object and, it won't be allowed. I said, you at least have to try. And she said, okay. So at any rate, when it was our turn to present our case, my lawyer stood up and said, I want to start by saying that we know she has been in prison 3 times before for embezzlement, mail fraud, credit card theft. And her son, the guy who worked for me, absolutely gasped. He had never heard it before.
Really?
He was not aware.
That's the that side of a narcissist where they can be kind of so loving and say all the right thing to the people they don't want to upset. But when they don't give a damn about anyone else, they don't care what comes out. So,
Exactly.
or what they do to them, right?
Oh,
So,
and I mean, I could just tell. I felt sorry for that poor guy because it was clear that she had, so the first of her problems legally occurred before he was born. Then he was growing up, and she is addicted to prescription pain medicine. And when they were living in southern New Mexico, she took out loan shark loans against the value of their house. And when those got called, they basically had to declare bankruptcy, and the house was repossessed.
mm-hmm.
And so the husband divorced her, and she and took the kids back east. And then her next legal problems occurred. So what she had told me about being a manager of one of my stores was she had managed a woman's clothing boutique in the Washington, D.C. area. Well, that's true. But she had also embezzled money from them
Yeah.
and spent 6
Where
months
was the background check, Bill? Where was the background check?
Right. So then she also said, and oh, by the way, I was the office manager for a Lutheran church in this town in southern New Mexico where they lived. And, one of my primary jobs was to count the collection baskets every Sunday and make the deposits. And that's also true. But she had also.
Pocket.
So the kindly pastor, who'd been the pastor at this church for about 30 years, knew his congregation fairly well. And he knew how generous they would be.
Right.
And in the absence, on a regular basis, and in the absence of some kind of catastrophic event that affected the entire community, his his weekly baskets wouldn't be off 20%, 25%.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started digging in, and next thing you know, she's convicted of 2 felonies and has to spend 1.5 years in the state penitentiary. And I believe, though I don't know for certain, although I put this in the book, that I know for sure she moved from this town in southern New Mexico to Albuquerque and started dating. And it turned out she'd married a guy in this town in southern New Mexico who was 15 years her junior. He was 36 and she was 51. And so she likes younger guys.
Mm-hmm.
And he had also had, I believe, a drug conviction. And of course, a felon is not supposed to consort with known felons, much less marry them.
Mm-hmm.
But she got tired of him and she moved to Albuquerque. And I believe she forgot to tell the court and her probation officer, because there's a mugshot of her. And I think she spent 60 days in the state pen as a reminder of who makes the rules. And if that's the case, then I met her about 2 weeks after she got out and moved back to Albuquerque.
I mean, it's also like, how did the kids not know that she was in jail for 18 months? Where was she? What was the explanation that she gave them? But, I know narcissists, and narcissists can twist any tale around that you will believe anything that they say because they're charming. They are charming. No, it's all about them. Everything is about them, but they'll make it appear that it's all about you to serve their own agenda, right?
Yeah, you're at fault. Mm-hmm. I mean, so part of the research that I did for myself, much less the book, because I wasn't even thinking about writing a book, I was recommended by the marriage counselor to read a couple of books by an Englishman named H.G. Tudor, like the English kings. Mm-hmm. And he's a narcissist, and as part of his therapy, he's written about 30 books on narcissism, one of which is called Evil. Mm-hmm. And I mean to tell you, I got about it's only about a 150-page book. They all are. They're fairly short. But I got about halfway through this book, and I was just shaking. Yeah. I couldn't believe what he was describing was exactly what I had lived through. And so at any rate, then there's actually a Canadian named Robert Hare, who teaches, I think they're in British Columbia. And he would speak with clinicians about his patients who were on the sociopath psychopath spectrum, describing behaviors and why he felt they were psychopaths. And the other clinician would say, well, I also have a patient that I think is a psychopath, and they exhibit some of the behaviors of your client and not others, and then some others that your patient does not exhibit. Mm-hmm. And what they realized is they don't have a scale for describing where people who are on the sociopath psychopath spectrum fall in order to be able to be most effective in treatment, and also basically be able to describe to other clinicians kind of where they think their patient is, and seek advice and counsel on all the things that you would do if you were able to be more precise about kind of where your patient fell. And that was a real eye-opener. And I'm not a clinician, so I won't claim to be able to make a diagnosis. But from my amateur point of view, I would say that when I met her, she was pretty squarely in the sociopath spectrum. And by the time we got divorced, she was bordering in the psychopath spectrum. And
well, when we've, the potential fire, yes, that's where she stepped over to that. I did a 3-part trilogy show on narcissism. It's sociopath, psychopath, and narcissistic parents. And then, the third show was breaking down the different levels, the scales of narcissism. I had the misfortune of being married to one, but he wasn't on a full scale spectrum, but it was there. And we have to realize that narcissists is very much to do, sometimes genetically, but also to do with their upbringing. If they're not taught empathy, if they're not taught compassion or caring, if they're not shown that, and in that first few years of development, they're still in that me, myself, and I, because a baby will cry when they need something. A kid will have a tantrum because they don't know how to express themselves. And if you don't show the empathy and the kindness and teach them how to be kind to others, then it's always going to be about them. And that escalates as they go, and they learn to manipulate. They're master manipulators.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
They're so incredibly charming. It doesn't matter what they do. They can make you feel guilty for finding them guilty, and it's,
for sure.
They're really artists at it. And the sociopath and psychopath, I mean, they're the ones that then step over into harming people, intend to harm. And the thing we have to understand is that a lot of the time they are zero of feeling for anyone else. I mean, you had somebody,
not even for her son.
Right.
I mean, I have heard her say very hurtful things to her son. And I feel sorry, as I say, I feel sorry for that poor guy.
Yeah.
They live together. They're living together now, and he's in his early 20s, mid 20s. And
his best thing to do is leave.
So another book by Sky Tudor is called Zero Contact. And basically what he said was, in order to be free of this person, you have to have no contact whatsoever. Yeah. Not with a child of theirs, not with property that they own, nothing. Just cut it loose. The other thing that was frightening from the Hare book is that he said, look, a tiny, tiny fraction of the population is serial killers or psychopaths. But that's not who we're talking about.
Right.
He said, it turns out there are, even if it's a fraction of 1% of the population, that's millions of people.
Yes.
They're out there, and they look like us, and they talk like us, and they act like us, but they're not like us.
Well, you had somebody very famous in America that was the leader, that is a poster child for narcissism.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we know who that is.
Yes. And that is the narcissist on a full scale of 100. But the sociopath and psychopath, the lack of empathy for other people, where the constant, he keeps tabs on everybody that upset him or disagreed with him, and he's going to get out to get them. That is the psychopathic or sociopathic tendencies that are there,
Right.
whether
The
it's
antisocial behavior.
yeah, and but whether it's actually, they do something about it, or they incite someone to do something about it, January
Right.
6th, it comes about through that manipulation where other people want to please them, just want to get praised by them, and will go do anything for them. Right. And now, when
Right.
you look at a lot of the bad leaders out there, or the people that, that have the big gangs, or the people that are leading people down the garden path, the leader will be the narcissist. It's their agenda. They don't care
Right.
who pays the price for it. It's their agenda.
Right.
But
But
they
they're
are
very charismatic.
oh,
I mean, they're incredible.
so charming.
And
Yes,
you
and they
want to
can make
follow
you
them.
feel like, I need you. You are special. You are this and that. I can't do without you. You're dead. Okay, next. I need you. And that is
Well,
how they
the other part
operate.
is and from their perspective, you're darn lucky to have them. Let me interrupt you. The
Yes.
dog went out, has to come back. I'll be right
Okay,
back.
I will
Give me
pause
one
for a
sec. That
second.
was going to happen at some point, and she was clawing at the door. And
No, if the doggy has to come in. No problems whatsoever. If it wants to make a comment, it can. That's fine with us.
well, and she and I bonded so much when Carol had cancer.
Mm,
Um, and she was actually on the foot of the bed when Carol died.
yes. Oh, and
Um,
then that a dog knows, and then it's kind of carrying the love of your wife over to you for you. So it's
yeah,
not just the love from the dog, it's I'm bringing your love's wife to you as well. So
yeah,
yes, a dog, when they lose somebody, yeah, it's amazing. They're incredible creatures, and if only we could find humans like them.
yeah. Well, and I've seen the shirt that says, "I really aspire to be the person my dog thinks I
Yes, exactly,
am."
exactly. Now, how was the dog behaving towards our green lipstick lady?
Well, it was funny. She also had a dog, and who was tiny, and that dog would get on the bed and ninja jump and attack my dog.
We
And
see a copied behavior, right?
exactly,
Exactly, yeah,
it was incredible to me. And I'd say, "You've got to get your dog to stop that."
yeah.
And she'd say, "If she doesn't like somebody, she knows, they'll know it."
So
And
what
my
she was
dog
saying
was
is that she didn't like anything, but you were just a means to an end, and she'll
right.
pour on the charm to get it, right?
Oh,
Move the lover into the new house. Thanks for the house. My lover and I are enjoying it. I mean, it
right.
really was a red flag, Bill. She really did have you under her sexy
Well, and
thumb there.
so, as I say, you try to endure that, so that you can get back to
No,
the
to
good
the
part,
high, to the high.
to
Yeah,
the high.
yeah,
And one thing one of my analysts told me or suggested is that the randomness of their kindness, of their reaching out to
yeah.
you, is what makes it addictive,
Yes.
because you don't know when it's going to occur.
Exactly. Exactly. You almost become the puppy dog that's waiting for the master to give you a pat on the head. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, you know, um, I would bend myself into a complete pretzel trying to be what he wanted me to be. And eventually I realized, what was it costing me? Everything I was.
Right.
I completely and lost me, lost the entire identity of me, and utterly miserable and afraid. No, not of the physical violence, but the piranha. I call it the piranha.
Yeah.
When they go after you, it's
Right.
like they're like a piranha, and they'll suck on all your energy until you are depleted, and then look at you. What's wrong with you? And remember nothing. Take
No, and
ownership
I
of
mean,
nothing. I didn't do
exactly.
anything. It wasn't me. Even if you filmed them, that's not me. Fake news.
So when I got divorced from my first wife, the mother of my daughter, I decided I had been exhibiting some behaviors I wasn't very proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to understand that and move through that. And so I found a guy. He had retired from Phoenix House in New York, which is the private drug rehabilitation center. Huge place down in Soho. Not quite that far, but it's down that way. At any rate, he had retired and was going to private practice, and he had been the director of research at Phoenix House. And the director of research gets the hardest cases
Mm-hmm.
because the typical therapies aren't working on them.
Right.
So at any rate, I showed up at his apartment and said, "So, Doc, how does this work?" And he said, "Well, we'll meet for 3 sessions, and then I'll evaluate whether or not I'm going to work with you." And I thought, well, that's damn cheeky of you.
Mm-hmm.
Here you are just starting your practice up. I've got good insurance and other financial means. I'm a gem of a client.
Yeah.
What do you have to decide? So at any rate, we got done with the third session, and I said, "So, what do you think, Doc?" And he looked at me and he said, "You have the most limited range of emotional response of anyone I've ever met."
Hmm.
I was like, holy cow. This is a
Right.
guy who's met a lot of drug addicts
Yeah, exactly.
who he's been able to reach, to get through to. And he said, "I call you medium cool." And I can imagine a file in his file cabinet that said William Saubert, AKA medium cool. And he said, "Nothing really gets to you. You don't get too
Mm.
high, you don't get too low. You know how other people behave, and you laugh when it's appropriate, but you don't really feel that."
Mm.
And I worked with him for 3.5 years. And one day near the end of our working together, I was driving down Fifth Avenue in New York to get to my apartment, and a woman cut me off. And all of a sudden, I just, I said,
That was a
"That
medium
was
cool.
delicious. I'll have another helping of that." So I told him about it at our next session. He said, "Yeah, we're getting close to the end here in terms of what we need to be doing." But his philosophy was the only thing we owe to ourselves is complete honesty.
Yes.
And he said, if you're rationalizing things away, then you're not being completely honest.
No.
And if you
Or
live by that philosophy,
engaged with self.
yeah. So what was happening with my relationship with the woman I married, the girl with the green lipstick, was I was rationalizing things away.
Yeah.
I was just not being completely honest with myself. And it was funny because I started the session with this marriage counselor. She said, "Have you ever been in therapy before?" And I said, "Well, yeah, for 3.5 years I worked with this guy, and I felt the hair on the back of my neck kind of stand up a little bit when I said, his philosophy is we have to be completely honest with ourselves." And I got that. I kind of had a little reminder there, like,
Are you
maybe in
being?
the past couple of years with this woman, you haven't been
Right.
completely honest with yourself. But okay, well, at any rate. And so then, of course, when she said what she said, it just really opened up my
Yeah.
eyes to the fact that I had not been
Right.
completely honest with myself about what was happening and what was going on and what I needed to do about it. I didn't realize at the time. So, I mean, there are really two elements to this. One is her emotional abuse of me. I mean, that was terrible. But the other that I didn't realize until we started this divorce proceeding and fighting the sexual harassment suit was the financial abuse. I mean, I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea how much she had been just literally robbing me,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the again, people say to you, "Gosh, Bill, you're successful, you're smart.
Mm-hmm. How
Why
did you
didn't you?
let this happen?
How did
Yes.
this happen?"
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something. I tell my story to people, and 3 out of 10 will say, "Oh my God, that happened to my daughter, or that
Yes.
happened to my son-in-law, or it happened to my brother, or it happened to this guy I worked with." I mean, it is remarkable. And oddly, um, although I think women, uh, like you say, are more kind of black widowish, my understanding is that it is men generally who are more prone to exhibit these behaviors.
Well,
And
the thing, from my take on it is that being a person that was medium cool and not used to actually expressing yourself emotionally, right? Like even if you did get mad now and again, I always say to people, our emotions are there for a reason. They're an indication of how we feel. Spend them, but move on. Don't become emotional about your emotion. right? But you've got to recognize the emotion and spend it, whatever it is, happy, sad, glad, whatever it is, spend it. If you were a person that really kind of didn't live in those emotions, didn't spend it, just, oh, it is what it is, right? And you went down that way. All of a sudden, somebody came with, as you opened up with, the sexy drug and made you feel the bee's knees, right? And took you to a high emotion that you've never known before. She became an addiction. And you would take
Oh,
any abuse from her, not even look at it as abuse, right? No, no, la, 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 no, that's not happening. That's not happening because you
right.
want to get back to that addiction, all right? Because you're not used to those emotions. Now, we do say to people, we want you to ride the wave of emotions, not on a linear line, like a wave. Be in and out of those emotions. We want you to have an etheric motion where it feels more like the hands expanding and embracing rather than the pitch high, which then always guarantees a deep low.
Right.
And those are the kind of happy spaces that we want you to get to, where you can ride that wave of joy. And when you come down, it's into a nice feeling, but not a deep thing. Why do we see so much addiction? Because it is that ultimate high. What's the big price? The very big low. What happens when you're in the low? You beat yourself up. You question yourself. You become insecure, or you
You
make
rationalize.
excuses. You
Yeah, you
rationalize,
rationalize.
and you make excuses for it all, right? Because you
I'm
want to get back to that
reminded.
high.
I'm reminded of a scene in The Big Chill, the movie The Big Chill, and Kevin Kline character and the Jeff Goldblum character are discussing what is the most important contributor to the human condition. And Kline says that's easy, sex.
Mhm.
And Goldblum says no, it's rationalization. And Kline said, no, you're nuts. It's sex. And the Goldblum character says, really? Have you ever gone a week without a rationalization? And, okay, according to this therapist I originally worked with, his name is George DeLeon. He's still alive. He's still teaching and writing. I think he's almost 90.
Mhm.
But at any rate, according to him, no rationalization is okay. But it is hard to, as a human, go without any. But
Yeah, but you
it's a
see,
matter
it's
of
don't be too
if
rational
that's
over your
your way of
rationalization.
coping. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, if that's your way of coping with the
yeah,
pain,
yeah.
then you rationalize. You
Right.
rationalize all the time,
Yes.
and you don't even catch yourself doing it.
No, no, it becomes a pattern,
The
right?
other thing that I'll say, and not in my defense, but in terms of just where I was emotionally when I met this woman, um, Carol died of ovarian cancer. And from diagnosis to when she died was about 3.5 years. And we, toward the end, they had to put in what's called a GI ventilation line. And that's because her small intestine had blockages on it and she kept vomiting. And if it doesn't go down, it has to come up, and that's unpleasant.
Right.
So they put in this essentially hole in your stomach because even if you don't eat anything,
Mm-hmm.
your body will process almost 2 liters of fluid a day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot to have that can't go anywhere other than to throw it up. So when they do that, you essentially starve to death
Mm-hmm.
because you're not getting any nutrition absorbed in the small intestine. And so when we spoke with the uh, palliative care nurse, and said, okay, what's the story? She said, well, you'll live anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, and it depends on how strong your internal organs are today, the day they put in the gastrointestinal ventilation line. And Carol made it 5.5 weeks.
Mm.
And toward the end, what happens when you starve to death is you babble all the time, you twitch,
Yeah.
your brain can't cause your
It's really cruel,
muscles.
actually, isn't it? It's really
Pardon?
cruel. We wouldn't do that with an animal. It's really, really cruel, you
Yeah, no,
know?
it's terrible.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I was her primary caregiver, and we're sleeping in the same bed we always slept in. I had to put up bed rails so she wouldn't pitch herself out.
Mm.
But so I said to palliative care doctor, I said, is there anything I can do? And she said, yeah, grind up between 2 spoons a lorazepam tablet, which is an anti-anxiety drug, and then put some liquid morphine and make a slurry out of it, and then put it on the inside of her cheek.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the muci will absorb it, and she'll calm down, and she should be able to sleep and not twitch and not babble and all that kind of stuff. So one night she was twitching, and so I got up and made the slurry and put it on the inside of her cheek, and she fell asleep, and I fell asleep. And about 4:45 the next morning, she started twitching again, and I'm thinking, oh brother, just give me 15 minutes more.
Mm-hmm.
And she threw her arm across my chest and put her head on my shoulder. So I hugged her and held her there for a couple of minutes, and then she rolled over, and I'm still thinking about having to make this slurry, and I'm listening for her breathing, and I turned on the light, and she had died.
Mm-hmm.
She hugged me to say goodbye,
yeah,
and then died.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to tell you, you wander around the house with the dog there, and the dog's kind of gets this accusatory look on her face, like, where is she? What did you do?
Yeah.
At least I imagined that.
Yeah.
And maybe she was saying that, who knows? But, and then you open a drawer, or and you turn into a weeping bowl of mush.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that human
Mm-hmm.
who was finally persuaded that I'd healed enough to be able to get into a relationship, or at least attempt a relationship. And I found an axe murderer. I mean, not a big,
yes.
but I mean,
but
a very accomplished manipulator.
Right. But what's the game that they played? In one thing in the big chill that he was right, sex. It is a huge thing, and you can rationalize the sex, because how did she hook you in? She was sexy. She knew exactly how to play on it, and they know your weak thing. All right. And they know how to play on that. And they always manage to talk their way around whatever they're meant to be guilty for, and make you feel guilty for asking or pointing things out. So that, you're up against a master manipulator that doesn't even know they're master manipulators, because it's just who they are.
Well, and they, you think, well, maybe she planned out getting a house out of me, but I don't think so. I think she just stumbled into it.
Right. Yeah.
And I think
this plan's going to call. I can ask for this, and I can ask for that, and I can move my lover in, and it's like, I've got a good sucker here, right? And
not only did I buy a very nice house, I put another $100,000 worth of renovations in it,
right,
and new furniture, and
I hope you got that back when you sold it, and you didn't give anything to her. Did she get any money out of the marriage?
Oh, yeah, she did. It's, marriage is a contract. And so when you break a contract,
but
there's always financial
fraud.
But the point is, that's fine. I mean, sure, would I like to have had the money back? Yes. But the bottom line is, I don't need it. And frankly, I do want her to pay for her criminal behavior, and I want her sent to prison.
Right.
And as I say, there are law enforcement agencies that are looking into her activities. My attorney put together I paid her 568 pages of evidence of this woman's criminal behavior, of which 500 of those are those Amazon charges.
Right.
And the detective that's working on it told me, holy cow, these are Class B felonies.
Mm-hmm.
Class B felonies each have a minimum of 5 years prison time.
Well, the problem is she's probably got some other sucker, on her hooks at the present moment,
Wouldn't surprise me.
No. And the trouble is, even if she went to jail, yes, it stops somebody else becoming a victim of her. But it also, there is no cure for someone. One of the problems with narcissism, where an alcoholic can say, I'm an alcoholic, I own it, and I want to get better. And narcissist, what are you talking about? It's not me, it's you.
Right.
And they won't take ownership of it, because they seriously, sincerely believe they've done nothing wrong.
They're the victim. You're the
Exactly.
one that's been victimized, not
Yes.
you.
Yes.
And they keep you off balance.
Yeah.
And, I would tell people, she blew up our relationship again this morning,
Hmm.
to go 3 days, and it was wonderful. And then she accused me of something terrible. And
Hmm.
I'd say, never in a million years would I be the guy to do that.
Right.
Here I am in defending myself instead
Yeah.
of saying, you're nuts.
Yeah.
You're the one who's behaving like that, not
Right.
me.
Yeah. But we go on the defense first. And that's one
Right.
of the problems, right? You're accusing me of something I haven't do. I have to go into defense and saying, well, what's your agenda? Why are you accusing me?
Right.
Right.
Right. What
So,
what is it that you get out of this
yeah.
because you're saying I'm the one doing something?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, that's another book by this guy Tudor. He's written a bunch, but it's called Fuel. And what they get out of that kind of behavior
Hmm.
fuels them.
Yes. Sugar high, as I call it. Yes.
Yeah.
They
The
get a
other part
kick out of
is,
it.
I mean, in addition to being addicted to prescription pain medicine,
Hmm.
um, she likes criminal behavior because she's
It's,
tiptoeing right on the edge,
yeah, it's
and it
exhilarating.
and if she doesn't get caught,
Yeah.
and even if she does, I mean, bear in mind when she defrauded the church in southern New Mexico, she was convicted of 2 5-year felonies, Class B felonies. Okay, she should have spent 7.5 years in prison, and she was a repeat offender by that time. She'd had a
Right.
felony in Virginia, and then she'd had a federal felony in mail fraud. So that's two previous. And do you know that she used her little girl voice and
Hmm.
got the judge to give her probation after a year and a half? And so here she spends a year and a half in prison, not 7.5. And it's because she poured the charm on the judge.
They know how to do it.
And
They know how to do
and
it. Now I
exactly.
can
And
recognize a narcissist, a lot better now. But back, when I in my 20s, I just thought, oh, so charming, this and that. Oh no, they didn't mean it. Right? They
right.
didn't mean it. And
That's a
or
rationalization.
I'm reading it the wrong way.
Right.
All right. And I know that they couldn't possibly do this to me if they love me. It must be a mistake. Right.
And they
And
say they love
yeah.
you.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And periodically demonstrated in some way. And you think, yeah, yeah, right. This is the part.
Well, I always say that
And
if they've drunk a lot, that's when you really see their true colors.
right.
And I realized you don't even like me, never mind love me. In fact, you loathe me. What the hell are you
Well,
doing with me? Because I haven't got any money for you. And I don't think he could even answer that question himself. It was all image,
yeah.
it's
Oh,
all
yeah.
image. And so, but it was eventually me that found the courage to say, no more. But it took a long time for me to
Well,
rediscover myself
for
to
sure.
find
And
that courage.
so, as I say, when I tell people about what's happened to me, and 3 out of 10 say, "Oh my God,"
Yeah.
I know. What amazes me is some of those relationships have gone on 10, 12, 15
Mine
years.
were 20 years. Yes.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, I
I'm
had children.
lucky.
And so, for me,
I
it
mean,
was like,
we were
oh,
only,
the children.
yeah, thank God she and I didn't have any kids.
Yes.
Um, but it's funny. My accountant, when she sends me it's called an organizer to fill out for all my information for my tax return, that has a question on it. And it said, did your marital status change during the year? Well, in 2018, I was single at the beginning of the year and I was single at the end of the year. But there isn't a question that says, did your marital status change twice during the year? Because I had gotten both married and divorced that year.
How long
So
were you actually married for?
7 months.
Right. Well, I mean, thank God you saw the light,
Oh,
before it got,
somebody grabbed me by the lapels and
yeah,
shook me.
yeah, exactly.
And,
And I
and
mean, there are so many people that literally will walk away with nothing, or
yeah,
they will make them out to be the villain and the courts award them everything. I mean, you were lucky to get away when you did.
yeah. And with as little financial
Right.
damage and emotional damage. And the amazing part about writing the book is, first of all, she had told me some things, And once you realize that you're
Mm,
dealing with a narcissist on the sociopath, psychopath spectrum, that gives you a frame to hang things on.
right.
And so she had told me at one point that when she was in high school, the father, who was divorced from the mom of her first serious boyfriend, and I assume she meant the first boy she ever had sex with,
Hmm.
propositioned her. And now I don't know that she took him up on it or charged him money or whatever
Right.
else, but a sociopath narcissist would do that
Yeah.
because they tend to be promiscuous or sadistic or both.
Yeah.
And so I took a little bit of something she had told me and blew it up
Right.
and turned it into who she is,
Yeah.
and or who I fictionally would describe her as.
Right. So the book
And
is a thrillerized version
right,
of what happened to you. Right.
right.
Right. But the bottom
And
line is it's what happened to you.
yeah, and so things like finding an incendiary device in a
Yeah.
ceiling fan.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And I would tell people about this, and I was sitting at a restaurant near where I live, and people that I know happened to be there. We were sitting at the bar and we were chatting, and I was telling them about this because people would say to me, "Hey, I heard you got married. When are we going to meet your wife?" And I'd say, "Well, we ended up getting divorced." "Really? How long were you married?" 7 months. There's a story in there.
Right, exactly.
So I started telling this gal, and it turns out she's a published author, and her first book
Hmm.
sold over 500,000 copies, which I didn't know. And she said, "Oh my God, Bill, you've got
This
a
is,
book."
yeah,
She
exactly.
said, "Send me an outline, like 20 pages, and just tell me what you think you would write about." And I did, and she got back to me and said, "Oh, for sure, you need to write this."
Yeah.
And so at any rate, it was cathartic to do it.
Yes, yes. But it's also a wonderful warning sign. This is, especially, let's face it, middle-aged men, you're a great target, especially if you've had a loss because they want to replace that loss because they know you've had a loss. So you're looking for that love that you've lost, whether it's a divorce or widowed. And they are they're, they're masters at this. It is
Mhm.
just something that's absolutely inbred in them, and it's how to register the warning signals. Now today, everybody's looking for love, everybody's looking for a partnership, especially as you get older. It may be the sex, or it may just be the companionship, somebody to share your life with, right? Um, and then somebody will come along and they'll say all the right things, but I know I've got to a thing where I'm looking for all the signals first, you know,
Well, and
because unfortunately, you do
so
become distrustful.
yeah, so I'll say a couple of things. One is I'm off online dating. I'm never going to go do that again.
Right.
But I don't mean to say it's not for other
No, but
people.
no, I've known people have had successes, right?
I
Yeah.
have, what, I started keeping tabs when people would tell me we met and married off Match, and I got up to about a dozen couples who were
Mhm.
quite
Yeah.
happily married, who had met online. And so just because it's not for me doesn't mean it's not for
Right.
other people.
Right. But
On
it,
the
but
other
it's
hand,
it's also due diligence too, right?
well, and so there's a gal in the community that I live in who is a very well renowned matchmaker.
Hmm.
And so I have engaged her services, and she's superb
Right.
and has introduced me to some very interesting, high quality, wonderful women,
Right.
some of whom haven't wanted to move ahead with me, some of whom I haven't wanted to move ahead with,
Right.
but nonetheless,
Right.
she does all the vetting.
And that's
And
that's something, unfortunately, it's we watch the movies and how easy it is to fall in love, and that is not the reality today. And the reality today on several levels. One, are they a con artist? Is there an agenda there, that is beyond what they're telling you? Mouth says one thing, actions say another. The other thing is, are they bringing their baggage with them? And have they actually worked through that baggage first? And what they're doing is really bringing an energy to you that is really honest and true, and not, so many people, especially out of divorce, immediately go back into another relationship. You need that time to decompress from the divorce, rediscover yourself, do the healing, And where, the love you attract is the love who you are and the love of self. And if you don't feel that security and love of self, you're not going to attract those people. So we've got to realize there has to be some work to do ourselves. We also have to pay attention to the hairs on the back of the neck. And we've got to ask the questions, because we are living in a society today where there is so much illusion, so much fake news, so much false advertising, is that we really do have to ask the questions and not take offense. If somebody is asking, if you're on a date and you're asking these questions, don't take offense. You're just
Right.
doing your due diligence. You just want to know that this is real. And if that person is hesitant in answering or answers too smoothly, it's like, follow your instincts. What do your instincts say? Not always what your mind says, the rationale, but what does your instinct say? Because sometimes those instincts are screaming at you, but we rationalize them and dismiss
Right.
them, right?
Well, no,
So,
and to George DeLeon's point, just be honest with yourself,
yes.
and you'll find a true path. You may not be happy with that path, and you'll seek other paths that will make you happy. But if you're honest with yourself, you'll find a clear, honest path,
Yeah.
the one that you can live with.
Right.
And I mean, basically, what George said was, if you ask yourself why you rationalized or did something that wasn't true to yourself, and you don't like that, he said, if you do that enough times, you'll change your behavior.
The old
And
rubber band
you'll,
thing, right? You
yeah,
don't like it, zap.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you will begin to behave in ways that you can be honest about, and that will make you happier and truer. And when you come to a point in your life where you ignore that or forget it or overlook it or rationalize it, all sorts of bad things can happen if somebody is tuned in. And look, I'm
Yeah.
a caring, kind of carefree, generous guy generally,
Mm-hmm.
and I think she dialed into that,
Yeah.
and so it was that's why I am pleased to have somebody helping me who I can talk to,
Yeah.
who can say, I don't think this gal's right for you, but this person is, and here's why I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And then you meet them, and you begin to explore and see.
If you feel there's more of a level playing field, right?
Well, yeah, and maybe even put your thumb on the scale a smidge, just
Yeah.
so, because your team has got two players who are looking. The other
Right.
team doesn't necessarily have two.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I don't mean that in a manipulative way. I mean it in a careful way.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to
Because
have either, professionals or friends that we can go, look, I've met this person, da 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 da. I really like that. I mean, my son is turning 37 on Sunday, and he's in a new relationship, but that relationship is, she's been divorced and she has a 7-year-old. He's just come out of a 6-year relationship. He's always in long relationships, 6 years, 5 years, 8 years. And but it's navigating a totally new path. And both of them are kind of bringing some past red flags, or and it's a totally different demographic, and there's going to be times you trip up, but
sure,
the thing is, talk about it. And if your person that you are interested in is not willing to talk about it, jumps and avoids all around it, it's a red flag, whether the narcissist player or just somebody who hasn't got hold of their emotional state yet, right? And it's
right.
you're always going to have something that's going to be your trigger. I'm sorry, when you do that, it kind of triggers that feeling. I know you don't mean it, but can you just try and avoid doing that, please?
Well, and so I want to say two things. One is, there was a song by a band called 10cc, and there's a line that says, communication is the problem to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your point, I think if we communicate,
Yes.
then regardless of what the problem is,
Yes.
we're going to be able to sort it out.
Right.
We may not be together, but at least we've got it sorted.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what I was saying. But the thing that really began to kind of eat at me a little bit is when this woman would say things to me, and I finally said, you know what? When you say that, that hurts my feelings, because I'm not that kind of guy.
Right.
And that just didn't even
register.
no.
I mean,
not even a
I'm also,
flicker in the eye.
I'm completely kind of in awe of the fact that you were honest enough to say to the people who bought your house, look, the person who put in the fan may not have put it in right. Just for safety, check it out. I'll check it out for you. How many people would say, oh God, I thank God I've sold the house, got rid of that, just move on, right? There's a fan there, and just ignore it. And the fact that you kind of were considerate enough to even, let's just check it out. And then thank God you did. I mean,
Oh,
all right, it wasn't properly plugged in, but who's to say something else wouldn't have happened there, or what else would have happened?
well,
And the fact that she would go to that extent, knowing that you've sold it and moved out.
she didn't know that.
Oh, she didn't know that. Okay, so
No, she
so
didn't know that.
basically, this was
I
you've
had
done this
forced
to
her
me,
out,
right? So
and she didn't
I'm
know
going to
that
get you.
she didn't know that I wasn't necessarily going to move in there.
Ah, so she thought she's going to get you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
So
so.
attempted murder. Attempted murder. You can add that
Well,
to the list. Yeah.
yeah, you're right, right. And I mean, and just silly things like kicking a toilet off its seal. So when I came into the house the first time after she and her boyfriend had moved out, uh, it was making this ominous gurgling sound in the second bathroom. And I looked, and she had just clearly put her back against the wall and just kicked the thing off its seal.
Vindictiveness. Yeah.
Yeah,
She
just
didn't get her
petty kind
way.
of stuff.
She didn't get
Pardon?
her way. She didn't get her way.
No,
So she was going to
absolutely
have a
not.
tantrum. How dare you do this to me?
Right.
I'm going
I'm
to tweet
the one who
it.
controls the narrative, not you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. They
So
can't stand anybody getting what they consider one up on them or catching them out because, they,
winning in any way,
yeah,
they
exactly.
cannot stand. If
Not
you
at
win,
all. And
they
it doesn't matter.
lost.
You can prove, look, you're a criminal. No, I'm not. I'm the victim
Right.
here. They'll always twist it around because in their twisted mind, that's all they can see. They
Right.
can't take account. Don't ask them to, if you send them to jail for 100 years, there still will be no accountability. They'll just learn to manipulate everybody in jail.
Oh, and they will get angrier and
Yeah.
angrier toward you.
Yes.
And you're the one who victimized them. And, it's not, why did you do this to me? It's, you did this to yourself. And
Yes.
I happen to be the one who did it too.
Well, this
You
is
know what I mean?
this is why you see people suddenly, they're in a new relationship, the boyfriend or husband may be even in jail for something or out of the picture, and all of a sudden there's an assassination. If I can't have you, nobody else can. Right. Or how dare you be happy with someone else?
Right.
And that retaliation, and they really and utterly do feel justified.
I don't think she would
Go that
attempt
far?
to do well directly. I think
Directly,
she would
indirectly.
manipulate someone else into doing
Well,
it
that's
on her
still,
behalf.
they don't do it themselves. They have
Right.
somebody else do it
Right.
because then they can actually say, no, I didn't do it. And the
Right.
fact they've ordered someone else to do it or paid someone else to do it
Oh,
is
just
neither here nor
sex
there.
with
But
them so that they
I
would do
didn't
it.
do it.
Yeah.
Wasn't me.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
And in their mind, it
And
isn't. They're not guilty.
yep.
So you're not
And
dealing with a rational mind.
well, and the thing that people would say is, oh, she must be very smart.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is, I don't know how smart she is. I mean, she has a college degree and all that fun stuff, but she's clever and manipulative.
Right. Yeah.
And so, as an example, not remembering that the default delivery address on her Ulta account was the house in Albuquerque. And all of a sudden, she orders something.
Yeah.
And not only does it have the delivery address and the green lipstick in it, it had the address where she is living.
Mm-hmm.
So she tells us by her own hand
Yeah.
where she is.
Right.
Which, of course, makes things a hell of a lot easier for the people who are looking for her.
Right. Yeah. I hope her son manages to get away from her and not get caught up in her web, because she'll use him too.
Oh,
And, next thing you know, he's got a criminal record and, he's just been trying to please mum, just love me mum. And, you see that time and time again, how they're drawn into the web. So I hope he sees it and gets out of there. And yeah, I hope she's caught, because she will do this again and again and again.
And probably is doing it.
And
again.
probably is. Yeah.
And,
exactly.
the part of this, she has two children, and the daughter will hang up on her.
Good for
And
her.
I'd say, why? Weren't you just chatting with your daughter? Yeah, she got busy. And then you realize she didn't get busy. She hung up.
Right.
She didn't want to talk to you.
No, she knew who she was.
And the son lives with her
Well,
where
you
they are
then
now.
you what then, or do you know for a
Both
fact now?
now.
So I mean, if the police are looking for her and you know where she is, why aren't you telling
Well,
them?
somebody has to issue an arrest warrant.
Right.
And now you need to understand Albuquerque, New Mexico is a very violent place.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had police officers and sergeants look me in the eye and say, yes, these are Class B felonies, but they don't rise to the level of gun in the face crimes.
Right.
We will get around to it and we will do something about it. And we are. And the evidence you put together is very helpful. But nothing can be done until they issue an arrest warrant.
And right now, I actually have a show out this week too about Chicago and the violence that's there, and how basically government and community need to come together. Changes have to happen because the violence is on the increase, and the distrust of police, of course, and then there's so much problems out there that there are so many crimes, what they call petty crimes, or not such important crimes because they don't risk someone's life. Though, I'm sorry, the fan
right.
is an attempted, but until somebody's actually maimed, they've got their hands full. And that means all of these criminals can just get away with anything because it's like, oh no, they're too busy to come after me.
Well, and so that's certainly true with white collar crime. And, the law enforcement agencies, the district attorney, a couple of years ago, had to dismiss 400 violent felonies because they had missed deadlines for various actions.
Oh my God.
That
Can
had
you
to be
imagine the
taken in court.
victims of that?
Can you imagine?
Oh, the victim, being victimized all over again, knowing the person that's done this violent crime to you is still out there and
Right.
got away with it, and now cockily can think that they can continue. It's
Right.
horrific.
And so when you put what happened to me and those felonies
Right.
side by side,
Yeah.
people look at you like, take a number because we're going to get to you at some point here, pal. But we've got guys waving guns on the street, and unlike Chicago, most of the gun violence is in the minority community, and it tends to be gang related. In Albuquerque, it's not only gang related; it's drug related.
Right.
And we have a huge traffic flow of illegal drugs from Mexico that come through Albuquerque and further south. And so that just compounds the problem.
Right.
Because there are people outside of the typical gang and minority communities who get involved in this as victims. And so it's nasty business. There's no two ways about it.
We're not in a war right now until they decide to go to another one or create another one. We have a lot of people that are in the armed forces. Why can't they not be recruited to help the police force and things like this, right?
So, well, as you know, I do 2 political opinion shows on the local NPR, National Public Radio affiliate. And we talk about this kind of thing. When you say that kind of thing as an American, you're branded as a racist fascist. And the truth of the matter
why a racist fascist for just wanting to help law enforcement catch the criminals, especially the drug lords?
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean there's any truth to it, but it is what you get branded as. So,
well, you know what? Branding changes all the time. And the more the facts are out there in people's face, the more, that things have to change. And, one of the things is we've become too scared to talk about things. A, political correctness. Yeah. B, we don't want to offend the criminals. May come after us. We don't want to offend the politicians that have been paid by the criminals, and everything has just become too sensitive. The sensitivity is the crime is out there and we've got to do something about it. And that means the community has got to stand up and say, no more BS. Let us come together and do something about it. And not,
Sarah,
I'm talking about, vigilantism. I'm talking about, as a community, all forces coming together to look at how to resolve the issue and not just leaving it in the hands of one.
Well, and so in Portland last year, the question was, why aren't federal law enforcement people being brought out? And it has to do with how the United States developed between the rights that the states have and the rights that the federal government has. And unfortunately, in that federalist system, the national government has very limited authority to do things in this particular arena. And I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to try to explain that any further, other than to say, as logical as that sounds, and as much as I would champion that in situations where people are just running wild and burning places and killing people, it would take a lot of effort, and there would be a lot of pushback in this country. But on this
point, this is something, as a Canadian or as a British woman, there seems to be more rights over having a gun and letting people with AK-7s go out and kill each other, or as he was saying in the Chicago show, they order different parts of a gun to repair their guns, and they create a gun, right? And there is more defense over that than there is actually over the killings. And I don't get it.
Yeah.
Why isn't this a national pandemic crisis that you're dealing with?
Well, and more guns in the United States than there are citizens.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
But, look, when I lived in Australia for 4 years, I was in the marketing department of MasterCard. And, the Aussies famously outlawed guns.
Yes.
But it turns out not 100%.
Right.
So handguns, sidearms, are completely outlawed. Only police and military can have those weapons. However, every man and woman over the age of 21 is allowed one rifle and one shotgun. So they still hunt. They hunt game and birds. And so it's not as if there aren't guns in Australia, but the truth of the matter is there are not handguns,
right?
And that would be a big step, I think.
Or AK-7s are getting in the wrong hands.
Right. But if you take a look at the total number of murders committed annually, by far it's by handguns.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we have a pandemic, an epidemic of fear, but also a lack of self-respect, self-value, a value of life. In other words, we have an enormous amount of people with a certain degree of narcissism out there, because to be narcissistic means that you don't have any compassion for anyone else. And if you can, whether you're in a gang, they looked at me the wrong way, pow, and that means you have no self-confidence. You have no self-value. You don't have any value over life. You are so scared shitless that you prefer to kill someone than face what the problem is. So basically a bunch of cowards. Sorry.
Narcissistic cowards.
Narcissistic cowards, yes.
Yeah.
And that's I have
that presupposes there was even a problem in the first place.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I have a series called the Forgotten Children series, and it goes right back to literally a child even before they're born. The lack of support for parents, not only to provide their children, but to raise their children, gun torn, gang torn, just people trying to do the best thing, or too many single parents, deadbeat dads, etc. Also deadbeat mums, there's those out there too. And what we need to do is switch it right back and look at, because we're very good at band-aiding things, but we're never good at looking at what is the root cause. And the root cause is the children. And if we could raise that children with compassion, with empathy, with caring, with being a part of the community, with having some value, not only over life, but planet, the food they eat, the consideration and kindness towards one another, they would end up growing up to be a more secure and happy adults. And we would see less of the violence. But we're constantly you have public, and we're getting really off topic here, but you have public incarcerations, And that's all. It's kind of like manufacturing, the prisoners, they throw them in there. There isn't much rehabilitation going on. It's just pack them in because they make money out of it. 70% of the people incarcerated were foster children.
Right.
What does that say about the problem? So, when we're looking at the problem, let's look right down to the second when somebody falls pregnant. How are we going to help them be the best parents they can be so that child has a chance? And
Well,
we're not paying attention to that.
and as I said, Kelly, so this woman I married, whose name is Kelly, was adopted at about 6 months old. And her parents thought they were not going to be able to have children naturally. And about a year later did, and could not help, I think, but show a preference
Right.
for the son that they'd had naturally, although they were certainly indulgent of her. When she turned 16, her father bought her a pink Mustang car. He gave her horse riding lessons. The brother was very smart, but not beautiful.
Right.
But the mother taught her how to do her own makeup and all that kind of good stuff. One thing she did tell me, and I think her mother must have realized what she was dealing with, when she began puberty, her mother put her on birth control.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I
because I mean, some
suspect,
people, kind of exude the sensuality, sexuality, because there's a sensuality, which is the sense of life,
right.
just the beautiful, tapped into all the senses of life. And it's beyond sex, although it can be very sexual. But there's some people that exude very early sexuality, and it's in their chemistry. It's
Well,
their presence.
and she told me that from a young age, she knew that men looked at her differently than they did other little girls.
Right. So she knew how to manipulate that. She
Well,
realized she could get things that
she was
way.
getting a signal that she thought,
Yeah.
maybe I can do something with that.
Yes. Yeah. 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 And I mean, it's we look at the problem today, and what is the answer? You incarcerate her, you're saving the other victims out there. She won't change because it still will be everybody else's fault, and she'll just end up manipulating the people in there. Right. But what you are doing is saving other people from becoming victims. And
Right.
what we're doing today is we're hoping, men or women, because this happens to women as well, mostly to men though, is do your background check, ask more questions, don't get
Be honest
led
with
with
yourself.
be honest with yourself. And yeah, when somebody comes on to you that is highly sexual and, oh God, they're looking at me, it's like, don't get driven with that part of your body. And if you're noticing that you really have a high with this person and then there's a low, no, you don't want that. Although it's exciting to have a nice wave, you do not want those extremes, because now it's become a narcotic to you. You have become an addict.
So the question is, when you're in emotional free fall, how do you find the branch to reach out and grab?
Right.
And so for a while there, I was really in emotional free fall with this woman. And just, I mean, here she is blatantly having, it was funny. When I got the house back, I went to inspect some other damage that had occurred in the house. Like I say, the toilet. And my neighbor came in and she said, are you the husband? And I said, well, I'm the ex-husband, but I'm the owner of the house. And she said, well, I'm confused because there's been another man living here for several months. And I didn't think it was on the up and up, because he'd always park his car on the opposite side of the street about 3 houses down. And if it was on the up and up, he would have parked his car in the driveway.
Right.
And I said, that's very observant, Marie. That's pretty amazing. And so at any rate, but I did want to say,
listen to your neighbors, listen to other people's observation, listen to your friends.
Right.
Because they see things that you don't, because you're too trapped into it.
Well, my two best friends, when we were dating, called her my cock teasing, gold digging girlfriend.
Accurate.
And then after we got married, they called my cock teasing, gold digging wife.
Right.
And
what did they say when you got divorced?
They said, why didn't you listen to us?
Right.
We've been telling you, dude.
Yeah.
And I bought this house shortly after we got married, the one in Albuquerque. And she said, when are you going to put my name on the deed? Now, she hadn't put any money toward this house.
Right.
And I said, well, I'll talk to a lawyer. We'll get it taken. No. Why are you dragging your feet? I said, I'm not dragging my feet. I'm going to do it as quickly as we can do it. So I closed on the house on a Friday, and the following Wednesday, her name was on the deed. And I said to her, I just gave you a $500,000 gift. So you need to appreciate that.
Right.
And and I said, no, it's a sign of good faith. I want to see your good faith. And a couple of weeks after that, the good faith was move her boyfriend in. So, but I wanted to say people can check out some of this on my website,
Yeah.
which is Bill Saubert. That's BILLSAUBERT.com. And you can get hard copy or Kindle ebook version of The Girl with the Green Lipstick on the Amazon Kindle platform.
And your forum show is on there as well, right?
It is.
Right.
So there are about 7.5 years of weekly podcasts from my political opinion show that you can access through my website.
Right. And, yeah, it's unfortunately, as I said, it's a story that we don't hear enough about, although we know that goes on because most men end up being too embarrassed to say it.
And I was embarrassed to. I mean, that's why I didn't listen to my friends, my best friends.
Right.
These are guys I've known since I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
And because truthfully, I didn't want to own up to the fact that I was being such a patsy.
Yes. Yeah. And, we all make mistakes. We all make bad choices along the line. And thank God you listened. You listened to the counselor and you didn't try and rationalize, oh, no, they're just doing this because. And you listened.
Well, you didn't understand. Maybe I didn't explain it enough.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You
instead of going, holy cow, you're right.
Right. And, getting your, your other lawyers to do the background check and, all of this is, it's like, oh my God, I've been conned. I've been a fool. And instead of hiding from it, I'm going to own it and I'm going to share it.
I've got to own this.
Yeah. To help other people own it too, or also recognize it when it's happening to them. And, it's, sometimes just people have got you under a spell and it doesn't matter what anybody else says. You're not going to hear it or do anything with it. The other thing is for the people who are friends of knowing that somebody's going through this, if they're not willing to talk to you, just say, look, here's the book, mate.
Yeah, right.
Just hear the book. Is there anything in this book that you kind of, feel might be happening to you? Read the book and, I found it very interesting. And then let's talk about it.
Well, do that. And also, if you don't want to read my book, read this guy Tudor's book and start with Evil. Yeah. And it will, if anything there resonates, then you're in a bad spot.
And for a narcissist to actually write this down isn't so much a repenting. It's just like, look how clever I am. I get away with it, right? They're doing it for their own fame and glory anyway.
This is not therapy for this guy. No. This is cool for this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
He's getting some out of the fact that he's getting recognition because he's so good at being bad.
Yeah. And, folks, I did do this show on narcissism. All you have to do is selfdiscoverymedia.com and put in the search engine narcissism. Or narcissistic, the search about psychopath. We do a whole 3 series. It was an eye-opener for me. And it really then became also, signs to recognize. And that doesn't mean somebody's self-confident or somebody's self-assured that they're the narcissist, but look at how they treat other people. That is the indicator. They may be all smooth and everything over you, but how do they treat other people? And, pay attention to those signs. Don't write them off straight away. Have a look at it, though, and pay attention.
We had these renovations done to the house. She just trashed those guys for everything under the sun.
Right.
The realtor who helped us buy the house, she trashed her. There were people who would say to me, I don't want to speak to her again.
Right.
Because, she had to have a car repaired. And said, you must know the best car repair guy. I said, well, I don't know if he's the best, but I like his work. She trashed him. I
Right, of course.
mean, you
Well,
know,
it's everybody else is out to get, everybody else is wrong, everybody else is inadequate.
yeah. And of
Only
course,
they are the best.
you're the guy that introduced her to them.
So therefore,
And they look at you. I mean, after I divorced her, long after I divorced her, I had to have some car repair work done on my own vehicle. And I had to promise the guy that he would never be in contact with her. I said, you won't. I divorced her. She's gone.
right.
Please fix my car.
Yeah. 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 And, sometimes you do have to build some bridges after something like this has happened, own up to it. I was a fool. I am sorry. And I'm sorry for anything that she did to you. I just didn't see it in time. And, that kind of, it wasn't your fault per se. It was her doing. But the fact that you didn't see it, is always something that kind of comes back on it. But to actually own up afterwards and say, look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't see it. I have now. She's gone. My apologies. It just helps other people kind of bring those, build those bridges again.
Well, here's the other part. So the realtor, okay. So I get the house back. I force her out of the house. She knows that's going to happen. And on a certain day, she calls the realtor, whom she's trashed to her face, and says, can you give me a referral in this community that I'm thinking of moving to? The realtor.
Yeah. No, they don't get it. They don't get it. They don't. They don't, because there's no ownership of what they've done. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I was in a traffic accident in New York City when I lived there one time. And the other driver who was at fault got out and started absolutely cursing at me for having caused this accident. And I thought, so, I very calmly, I had a notebook with me and I was writing down where it had occurred and what kind of car he was in, what his license plate was. He stops through this cursing, calling me the foulest things on the planet, and says, give me a piece of paper. And I said, go to hell. You just called me every name in the book.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. Yeah.
You now want a piece of paper?
Right. Yeah.
And that was Kelly. I mean, Kelly could be giving you a tirade, and if you were having a soda or you went to get a glass of water and she wanted one, she poof, give me a glass of water. You're like, are you nuts? Look what you were just doing.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there is, I don't know what you're talking about. He was filmed, he was recorded. That's not me.
Right.
And there is no accountability. There is no ownership. They just don't see what you're seeing. Right. And in a lot of ways, we have to feel sorry for them because they're never going to really understand true love of self, real companionship, the real beautiful gift of giving and sharing and kindness. They're never going to know it
without being manipulated.
Because for them, it's all about a means to an end for them. What can I get from you? I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be sexy. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. And when I've got it from you, then you can go to hell.
Right. I don't need you any longer. What are you hanging around for?
Right. Exactly. So. Exactly. Men, beware. Women, beware. It definitely happens in cases like you, but it happens in business. It happens everywhere. Oh, yeah. And it's like, be strong enough in your own self-esteem and your own self-worth not to let these people manipulate you. Because if they can't manipulate it, they've moved on. If they can't manipulate you, they're not interested because then I can't get anything
any fuel.
No, they're going to go after people who are vulnerable.
Who give them fuel.
Yes.
If they can manipulate them, that's getting something out of you that you wouldn't voluntarily give.
Right.
And so that's fuel for them.
That's good.
They're manipulating you. They're getting something.
Yes.
That you wouldn't have otherwise given them. If you start refusing to give that to them, they move on.
Yes, exactly. Please move on. And that sugar high that you have, right? But that sugar high is not worth the lows. It's not.
Well, you find that out in retrospect.
Right.
But when you're in the free fall,
yes,
it just feels like I don't know where to grab onto because nothing really seems like it's going to help.
Right. No. And it's a hard one to be, and a lot of people have gone through it. But there are movies on women like this, and it is mostly women who are very. I mean, there's a lot of narcissistic men. There's absolutely them great manipulators, but women are very, very good at doing this to people who you've had a loss. You're looking for a new love. They're just no, right? And it's just the way it is, and we've just got to read the signs. So please, folks, if you know somebody that's been going through this, send them the show. Send them the book. The reason we do this, he's been open and honest about his own foolhardiness of buying into this, the addiction that he had to this woman. But 7 months from beginning to end, she was gone. So he woke up and he listened to other people eventually. And you want whoever's going through it to listen. And so if they're not willing to listen to you right now, maybe they'll listen to Bill or maybe the book, but at least put it in front of them. At least put it in front of them, because at some point, well, I'll just have a look. And all they need is maybe 1 or 2 sentences and go, oh my God, oh my God.
As soon as you can relate to anything that's in that book, it's time to say, I got to move on.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for having the courage for sharing. It takes a lot of men wouldn't, and they wouldn't.
Letting me share this with you and your audience. And it felt good for me personally, emotionally, to do it. I think it also brought me back to centering around being completely personally honest.
Yeah.
And having to tell the story that happened. And it's a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage others to be, look, I mean, I hope to find a partner, a mate, maybe another wife, although that would be number 4, but at any rate, but I haven't despaired. I mean, I believe that there are good relationships out there, and I have to be, for me, more cautious about how I go about finding them.
Right.
But at least I want people to know that if this happens to you, you don't bury yourself someplace and say, I'm done.
Yeah.
You really have to keep going on.
Yeah.
And I've got great friends and great relationships, great communities that I am involved with. And you have to tap into that and just keep on with your life.
Exactly.
And I think that's it. It felt deep and dark when I finalized the divorce with this woman, but I saw the light at the end of the tunnel and began to realize, there's good that's going to come out of this at some point.
And I'm glad that you weren't in it for so long, because if you'd stayed in it longer, you would have been so beaten down that, you wouldn't have been able to see the solution. And that's why, so many people, You know
what else? I have to say that having gone through some therapy earlier,
you knew the value of it.
I at least bought into the notion that therapy could have value. And so when this therapist was strong enough and brave enough to say on our first session, having just met me, you need to get out of this right away. I at least had fertile ground to say, I get that.
Right.
And I know you are saying this professionally and to give me, guidance here, because I have lacked guidance.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Mine would never go to therapy. So, right. So, thank you for being brave and honest and open. And I hope that this show and this book certainly helps somebody else that's kind of on that path. Don't beat yourself up for being caught up in it. They are master manipulators, but recognize that you're in it, or somebody like that, and get the hell out of there. The best way that you can, get the hell out of there.
Advise them, say, look, I don't have a dog in this fight, except for you. You're my friend. You need to do this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm glad you've also written it as a thriller. You've taken all the facts and thrillerized it, and that kind of makes it more enticing reading for people as well, right?
It does. It's not for everybody, but it's a thriller. I promise you that.
Right. And why are we drawn to movies like this and in shows like this? Because it's like, oh my God, I had a close call on that. Well, that person was like that, and we can all relate in some way or other.
Oh, we empathize.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
And if you haven't had it even to an extreme degree, you may have experienced even a modest level.
Right.
And you go, oh my God, So I do help. I do hope that what I've written helps people and that they enjoy reading about what happened to me and how I managed to get out of that. But it's a ripper.
Yeah, yeah. Christmas is coming up, folks. You know somebody who's going through something, or even somebody that is starting the dating scene. This
Yeah.
is a book for them and go, you know what, this might be faction. But you know, it's also a good manual, right? Of what not to get into. So,
Oh, it is.
yeah.
No two ways
So
about it.
yeah, and there's different ways, and as you said, there's some good online, sites, but it also comes into um take it slow. I mean, you knew her for a long time before you even got involved with her. So, it's like some of them are very patient in their manipulation, right?
Oh, I think she was having other
Yeah,
relationships and
exactly.
just kind of kept me on the string.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I know of a couple that she had kind of owned up to, and I finally said, "Look, I don't care about the past. I care about the future. Let's draw a line in the sand, step over it, and that's what we'll care about."
Yeah.
And
But
she
you
said,
see, you were
"Okay."
being rational and she doesn't understand the word.
Oh, she didn't want to have any of that. She still had this boyfriend who, when the ghost
And
was
I
clear,
wonder where he is now.
oh, he probably still lives in Albuquerque.
Right.
He
Right.
did
Well,
not go with her to where she moved. I know that.
all right. Well, the fact that he put that fan in with intention to cause a fire, that's intent. So he's just as much on the hook there. So yeah, I mean, we watch these movies, we think, oh no, it can't be real. I promise you, some of the reality is even more so than what we see on
People
TV.
would say to me when I was about 3 layers into this story, just telling them verbally, "You're making this up."
Right,
And
exactly.
I'd say, "Nope.
I wish.
Truth is stranger than fiction."
It is. It is. Yes. But you're free now and
I am.
open to true love, honest love, and you haven't
I have
let
to
it
tell you
jaded you.
a funny thing, Sarah. I'm going to meet somebody for a drink this evening. I did another podcast, and it got put up on this blog person's site, and one of their subscribers listened to our interview. Turns out her company is having an offsite in Santa Fe this week. She's
Ah,
here. So she called this woman who, or texted her and said, "Do you think this guy would mind just meeting? He sounds interesting. So if we're going to have a drink tonight, how's
but
that for a
she's listened to the
small
story. She knows the background, and she also knows what you're going to be looking out for. So yeah, it's I'd love to know what happens.
I'll let you know. I have your email.
Good, good. Well, thank you so much. As I
Thanks
said,
again,
very
Sarah.
brave for sharing it. Cautionary tale for everyone out there. And the more we know, the more we can defend ourselves, the more we can depower them and empower ourselves. And, also to understand for a narcissist like that, they really cannot help who they are. But what we can do is not feed their own addiction to their own power. So
Right.
set yourself free, be you, be love, and come from that loving place, starting with the love of self. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. You will hear many, many shows here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. We have new shows for you out every week. Just find them on our podcast or What's New. If you feel that you have something to share that makes a difference in the lives of others, or you too feel that you could be a host, please contact me at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com and we will be glad to speak with you. Have a wonderful day.